Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
In a couple of weeks, my kid will finish school for the summer. And a week after that, she will start her first camp. Both my partner and I work, and we need childcare for July and for August. We are lucky because we can afford to send her to some of those camps over the course of the summer. But they are expensive, hundreds of dollars a week. Not everyone can afford to do that. And while perhaps you and I, or people of a certain age, have childhood memories of wandering around town or getting lost in the woods and making our own fun, that's all but impossible for younger children in big cities today. So, how do you find childcare, give your kid a summer to remember, and not go broke doing it? That's this week on In This Economy. Yeah, it's that time of year when kids who have any taste in classic rock and roll are busting out the old Alice Cooper. But here's the thing. Once school is out, what the heck are parents supposed to do about childcare for 2 whole months? I'm Jordan Heath Rawlings, and you're listening to In This Economy, where we help you understand the systems that create your money problems, from grocery bills to childcare and everything in between. In each episode, we talk about a common financial challenge, and then I talk to an expert who can explain the factors causing that problem and offer you, if not perfect solutions, then pivots or options and things you can do, even in this economy. I think I got the question this year in about March. I would have been standing at pickup or drop-off and talking to another parent when they casually would have mentioned, "Are you signing up for camps yet?" When you have a kid who's old enough not to need constant oversight, but young enough not to be left on their own, you got to start planning for summer early. And it can get really expensive. Some of the most frequent questions we get on this show are around the cost of having kids. And there are a lot of costs. We've already done one episode about the basics, and we will link to that one in the show notes if you'd like to listen to it. But this is about keeping your kids busy. Or not. And maybe it's about why that not isn't really an option anymore. We also got an email from a listener named Nikki wondering about the costs of having her kids signed up for competitive sports. I'm worried about the cost of camp. You might be worried about the cost of daycare in the summertime. The real question here is, was it always this way? I grew up spending summers on a farm, and yes, I would be put to work. But when I wasn't weeding the garden, I did a lot of nothing. I played with some cousins, I read some books, I ran around in the woods. My parents didn't always know where I was. There wasn't a ton of supervision, but I knew where to go if I needed help, and that was about it. But these days, like I said, it starts around March. Are you doing camps? Which camps? Art camp, sports camp, animal camp, chef camp? Which ones? Because you have to put her somewhere. The question we wanted to answer with this episode is, do you? Do you really? Alyson Schafer is one of Canada's leading parenting experts, so we called her up to ask about just how we got here and why parenting attitudes have changed so much over the years. And also, to ask her practically, what are some affordable ways that you can make sure your kids are occupied and safe this summer? Alyson, are kids allowed to just do nothing anymore?
Not only would I say that kids are allowed and should be allowed to do nothing, I would actually say that it's a very healthy and imperative piece that we need to put back into kids' lives that has woefully been whittled away to nothing. So yes, I think it's important, imperative, and we need to get back on the game there.
Okay, but so when I'm talking to other parents in our neighborhood and I talk to friends who have kids and we talk about the summer months when kids are out of school, the first question that we always ask each other is, what camps are you in? Did you get them into the camps? Because you don't want to have a kid sitting at home without a camp or something to go to during the summer. How did we get there?
Well, here's what I think happened in the journey. Two factors came into play. One was kids, minors, if the adults are at home, need some form of supervision. And we went from having communities where there was like a village and there was different eyes on the block. And, you know, I'm watching your kids, you're watching mine. They were running around the neighborhood. They were in my kitchen for lunch. They're in your kitchen for dinner. We kind of had a community vibe happening. And that kind of disappeared. So then suddenly we had to like create, what are we going to do in terms of supervision for these kids in a healthy, respectful way? So I think that piece kind of came up. And then the other thing that tied into that was we got into this real scarcity mentality where we were like, childhood is a time where we need to like educate and advance our children because only the cream rises to the top and only the people that are the most educated and well-rounded and have the best resume are going to get those precious few entries into whatever, Harvard, law school, the job market, whatever you want to call it. And lest we let our kids fritter away their time playing Frisbee when they could be learning another language. And so we suddenly saw parenting as our prime directive was to prepare our kids for getting developed to enter the workforce and higher education. And we took that just like so seriously. And downtime, leisure, fun, and play suddenly became wasting an opportunity, which is so misguided in so many ways and tons of research to back up why that's the truth. But I think those two things happened at the same time. We lost the village and we thought we had to be hyper educating our kids.
Let's talk about the village first. When and more importantly, why did we change that practice? Or did it just change on us? And was it gradual or sudden or what happened?
I mean, I'm not a pure historian on this, but I will tell you that in the broad strokes, that it is actually a fairly modern phenomena that some historians have marked as we decided there was something called stranger danger. And the minute we got into stranger danger as a perspective, like one tragedy happened and then it rippled out and suddenly we lost trust in one another. We lost trust in neighbors. And that is not statistically true. There has never been a safer time to raising kids. And so a few terrible things happen that get media headlines, and then everybody gets very paranoid about how can you leave your kid and you didn't check that out. And because it's so horrific and it goes to our fear-based mind, we just ingrain that. And I think we have to go back to what Mr. Rogers was trying to tell us all, which is a stranger is just a friend you haven't met yet. And but we're not. We're very fearful of one another. And we tell our kids to be very weary if somebody starts to be social and kind to you. And yes, we need to have street smarts, but isn't that sad that we've kind of grown up raising our children with the idea that the outside world is a scary place where at any moment other people could do bad things to you, as opposed to if you get lost, just ask someone for directions. I mean, that's such a different mindset in terms of psychological safety. And so we've kept our kids at home with a few select relatives, and we haven't put them out into the general population. And I mean, if we're going to really get into the statistics, the people that are most likely to harm a child are actually people that they know.
Mhm.
It's parents, it's direct relatives, probably the person who's going to be the buffer to protect our kids from that is sending them to camp and sending them out into the neighborhood where other people have eyes on them to go, that kid's acting weird, or that seems a little odd that that's happening. And so if we're going to have eyes on our children, we have to put them out into the general public so that the quiet, private things that go on behind closed doors don't happen or get noticed faster.
How do we deprogram ourselves from that? Because I bet you there were a bunch of people listening when you said, a stranger is just a friend we haven't met yet, who were like, no, like it's a very visceral reaction to those, horrors, as you mentioned, that we see on TV. How do you overwrite that?
Well, I think part of it is being intentional about recreating communities. I mean, I had a woman who worked for me, and she purposely bought a house in a community that had a lot of young kids because she thought that would be a great place to raise her children. Good schools, lots of young families, and her house backed onto a park. And, she paid a premium for having a house that backed onto the park. Meanwhile, none of the kids were ever out anywhere. They were nowhere to be seen. Everyone kept their kids at home. And so she took on a one-woman campaign to go door knocking to say, hi, I just moved in down the street. I've got these kids. Do you have kids? Do you guys want to have a street party? Do you send your kids to the park? Well, no one was sending their kids to the park because there was no kids at the park. And she's like, I can watch from my kitchen window. They can do hopscotch on our street. And it was like she had to draw these people out of caves. It was like nobody wanted to go there. So the minute you start to talk to your neighbors, know your neighbors, start to build community, people aren't going to build it. You have to advocate for yourself. And so the minute you start to get that sort of feeling of community happening, and they aren't strangers, there are people behind those doors. Those are the other people walking the dogs on the street, the other kids pushing the strollers, whatever,
right.
The teenagers who can babysit. We need to knit that together again. And I think it's particularly timely to do this after the pandemic, where we were already pre-pandemic pretty isolated.
Yeah.
I would say the pandemic made it that much more difficult. So this is our call to action, people. Do we want to live in this life, or do we want to rebuild community? And you can't just sit there and wait for it to come to you. You got to go out and do something about it yourself.
The genesis of this episode, and obviously this show, is how unaffordable paying for the kind of supervision you're talking about during the summer months can be, especially camps, where you're looking at hundreds of dollars per week just to give your kids a place outside of the house with supervision. How can you replicate that in your community on the kind of scale that is necessary, right? Because the parents who are asking about camp are working parents who need to be able to actually work. So while it's nice, and we should definitely, send the kids to the park more for an hour or two, how can you find ways to replicate the care that day camps provide during the summer that allows parents to actually focus on work?
Yeah, I mean, and there are great camps. Most municipalities realize that they have a civic duty to provide affordable or free programming for kids. And
it can often be like the Hunger Games to try to get those spots.
Oh, and listen, I know you got to get up at 4:00 in the morning to get in the queue, and those, it's like a lottery system or the first come, first serve, and it's like wristbands to a Taylor Swift concert or something.
Right.
Like, it's like, I get it. I'm not saying it's not hard, but I think that is a route that you can go through. And I think there's also kids who have particular interests, like if you're into robotics or they're into arts and crafts or soccer or something. Like, I can see where it would be really great to get on take advantage of outside of school time, because schools are now very reading, writing, and arithmetic, and we've lost a lot of the other music, drama, some of these other things have fallen to the wayside. And if that's your kid's passion, wouldn't it be great if they could have an opportunity in the summer to engage with that kind of learning and to look for those programs and to see if there's something affordable from the city or the museums or the art galleries? That's great. It takes work, but you can find it, you can see it. But I think at the same time, going back to this idea of, we're adults, we've got kids, they're home for the summer, we don't have year-round schooling like in the United States. A lot of the states actually have that, and it's probably more a childcare thing than a learning thing. So what are we going to do about that? And I think it goes back to the idea of the community and saying, how did it go in the old days when somebody had to go out and like kill the wildebeest and the other people had to go pick the berries and
Right.
harvest the wheat and, took you half a morning to, make your tortilla or depending on your culture. Like, we weren't sitting around saying, I'll just go entertain the children with a puppet show. That wasn't really a thing. This idea that we have to entertain children is not really how we've ever raised kids. Yes, they need to be supervised, but they need to be engaged and they need to be with people in healthy relationships and in safe environments. And that can look so many different ways. That could be putting a notice in your condo and saying, hey, do you guys have kids around for the summer? Does anyone want to get something going? And thinking more intergenerationally, where we might say, hey, I've got a teen who's home and bored and I don't want them playing Fortnite all day. Maybe they could be the ones that take you down to the condo pool and I'll slip them some money so that they can do swim lessons. Or a senior who loves playing piano and, would love to spend some time with somebody younger to teach them casually, not formally, but, some piano lessons. And I think if we get creative and think a little differently about solving the problem and reaching out to the other people that are around that also have to fill their time, community connections, taking some initiative, being creative. I think there's a lot of solutions out there that maybe we just don't think about because we're so programmed by our culture to say a good parent sends their kid to camp and a better parent sends them to an expensive camp. There's very much a tier of camps. Let me tell you, they carry a certain status amongst the people in the know. And it's too bad. There's absolute benefits, but there's no shame in not sending your kid to camp. Let me tell you.
What do we know about the benefits or not of just having a kid that like bums around for the summer? I did that as a kid on a farm. Kids today, like you said, might want to just play Fortnite all day. They're on vacation.
Yeah, and I am all for the idea that kids can understand the difference between a school day and a holiday and a work day. That's fine. It's your birthday, you get the extra cake. I mean, I'm all about that. That's totally fine. But I think the part about having this like big expanse of time is that we have forgotten that one of the missing and important developmental parts of childhood is actually unstructured play.
Mm-hmm.
And so unstructured play, as we research it and see the benefits,
Maybe define it first for us so we know exactly what we're talking about. Give me some examples.
For sure. So, I'll compare it to structured play. Most parents put their kids in structured play. You go to gymnastics, you go to soccer, you go to baseball. You have a coach. So there's an adult. There are rules to the game. You're told to do the rules of the game. Unstructured play is what kids have done around the world from time immemorial, which is even after disasters like Hurricane Katrina. And yes, it's traumatic. Those are traumatic experiences. But, even in those worst human case scenarios, you know what those kids do? They get out and they start playing again. They play almost immediately. They find a bottle cap, a stick, a hubcap, and they start to make up games that don't have any rules. It's like you can't stop kids from playing. You actually can't. That's their natural way to connect, to process life. It's an important way to process grief and trauma, to understand your world, to make friends, to make bonds. It is the language of childhood. It is the developmental path in childhood. And we've robbed our kids of that because we put them in all these pre-K, nursery school, learn your ABCs, your 1, 2, 3s, your swim lessons. And if you look back at and look at other cultures like Wayne Gretzky, amazing hockey player, but his dad just like took him out and did shinny in the backyard. And in France, when you look at swim lessons in France, it's parents and kids getting into the pool together. There's no instructor. You don't separate the parents from the kid. You just go frolic. You actually just go swim together. So somehow in our culture, we turned everything into leagues and registrations and coaches and rules. And you go from, if it's swimming, you go from tadpole to guppy to shark to,
Right.
what it's like you can't do anything without being put on some progression chart that's telling you how you're doing and if you're progressing. And so the idea of just doing things because they're fun and kids getting together, meeting out in the backyard, and somebody brings a bat and someone brings a ball. And if you're rude to them and you say mean things to them, they say, I'm taking my bat and I'm going home. And there's no parent there to say, well, let's have a discussion.
Right.
Let's link arms. And how did you feel about that? What did you want to say? In fact, they have to broker and negotiate it with no parents around. And so the guy who was being the jerk learns experientially, you know what? When I'm a jerk, people leave and take the ball, and now I have no one to play with. You don't need a parent to process that. That's actually something that life teaches you. And if you're somebody who is shy, but there's no one to play with, but you're left to your own devices, you're like, well, I don't really know that kid down the street and he seems older than me, but it's either sit here alone or go talk to that person. You build up your courage. And so you go and you start playing with somebody who's a different age.
Mm-hmm.
And we've made it so clean and cookie cutter and manufactured that we've got all these missing opportunities. And I really do believe that this is one of the culprits that is underlying some of the causation around why we have such high incidences of anxiety in our youth today. These are the missed experiences that really do build coping skills, problem-solving skills, interpersonal skills that lead to tremendous resilience. And so from the outside, it might just look like a kid sitting on the end of the driveway, not talking to anybody for 2 hours. And then they decide they better build a lemonade stand and talk to people. But we want to jump in and solve that. We see it as idle time. We see it as wasted time. We want to rescue our kids. And maybe there's some real value in just stepping back and going a lot slower and trusting the process a bit more.
How can you get parents to take that message to heart and act on it? I ask this because I know many parents have experienced judgment from other parents about how kids are raised these days. And it's often about like, well, little Erica is doing gym and then she's got piano lessons and then she's got this. And what's your kid doing? I don't know. They'll figure something out. And it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, good luck.
I think it is true that parents are also social creatures who want to fit in and belong and want to be validated that they're doing a good job. And let's face it, our kids don't really tell us we did a good job until they're much older. Usually when they have kids of their own and then they go, how did you do it, Mom? You only had the, that's usually when you get the big thank you. But it's a pretty altruistic sport. You're not really hearing it from your kids as you're raising them. But if you do need that external validation, then I would say just be very conscientious about creating the context for you. Meaning, maybe you do need to find a neighborhood where parents parent the way that you do. Or maybe you need to go through your social media stream and delete the accounts that are discouraging and making you feel guilty and negative, and then go start doing hashtag free range kids or natural childhood, and you're going to find that there's all kinds of people that are actually like-minded with you. It's always easier to do things together, but you have to do it with intention, and it may not be your immediate group around you. So you're going to have to go hunt those people down. But I think you'll feel a lot better about yourself when you realize there's tons of psychological research. There's lots of podcasts. There's all kinds of Facebook parenting groups. You'll find somebody in your neighborhood. You will. You just maybe have to be a little bit more aggressive on the hunt to find them.
Lastly, beyond, going out yourself and cultivating that kind of community and like-minded parents that you just mentioned, how do we return to making, I guess, the world at large more accepting of children's independence? I'm not speaking here of, the other parents on the street. I'm speaking about the looks and unwanted attention and sometimes even unwanted calls to police you get when children are doing things alone and unsupervised and someone thinks they're in trouble, or even just the way we tend to see a lot more complaints these days about children being children in public spaces, whether that's a restaurant or an airport or whatever. And they're doing that unstructured play or sometimes unstructured tantrums. And people seem to feel like children don't have a right to the same space as they do.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good observation of where we're at, about how society observes children, their space in the world. And to your point, we've come from the pendulum being very far swung in the direction of where are the parents? We need to have care and concern for children who don't have a voice, that can't speak up for themselves, that the world's a harmful place, and we all need to have, eyes on the children. And so that becomes a real problem when you want to live in the moderate zone, which is, of course, children need supervision. Of course, they need to have people around them. But, if you talk to the average parent and they say, well, I was going to let my child walk to the store and get their own ice cream, but I was worried that someone would call CAS. Mm-hmm. And, people have told stories of like the police pulling their children over, and they literally have like cards that say, I'm a free range kid. I have permission to walk to school on my own. Here's my parents' phone number. And it's like, wow.
Yeah.
That's like really scary that the pendulum has swung so far in that direction. So I think part of it is to keep this conversation going. So I thank you for bringing this up, on your show. And to try to empower every parent to say, where could you be on your growing edge? So you're feeling it in your mind, you're enacting this in your own household, but how could you be just that much more of an advocate? Like, what would that look like to lean into that a little bit further? And I think all of us can find our growing edge. For some people, they're very conservative. Their growing edge might, just be letting their kid walk from the car to the house unaccompanied, let alone dropping them off a block from the school. But I think the more that we find our growing edge and start having trust in our fellow person and putting that into actual action, then we start getting feedback from the world that, oh, you know what? And that went well. Nothing happened. They went to the sleepover and they didn't get murdered. And, my kid got lost, but somebody said, oh, did you get off at the wrong bus stop? Here, I'll walk you back to the bus stop you were supposed to be on. And then your kid has the experience of saying, oh, I got myself in a real situation, but people were really kind. They helped me out. And so I don't think we can really get there unless we're willing to do experiments. And I wouldn't ever expect a child or a parent to do an experiment so great that they became flooded, overwhelmed, panicked. I don't think that's how we grow. I think we just push our boundaries, talk about it, explore it, keep it top of mind, keep it in the conversation, and just say, like, that's where I want to grow. I'm just going to push that boundary because I don't want to live in a world that doesn't have space for kids. And so find your comfort space and feel good about it.
Alyson, this has been an amazing conversation. And maybe just before you go, to bring it back to where we started, if you could sum up just a few ideas for parents who are staring down 2 months outside of school and don't have a lot of money for camps, give them the top 3 of what they should look to do.
Yeah. So first of all, don't feel guilty that you can't afford camp or didn't get camp organized. That's not going to be make or break in your kid's life. You now have another window of opportunity for something else great to happen. So let that go. Let the guilt go. Parents are too guilty. 2, get creative. The question is, what can you build with your kids and with other people in your community, or start to build a community that says, you know what, we got a problem to solve. We got a bunch of kids home for the summer. Nobody's got money. I got to go to work. You got to go to work. What could we get set up here to cover off those hours using the power of the group that we've got if I reached out to people? So intergenerationally, interfamily, think outside the box. It doesn't have to be stereotypical. And you might find that, wow, there was a lot more people in the same boat, a lot more people that were willing to step up when I sort of made it non-typical. So get creative. And then the third, I think that the idea that when there is downtime and unstructured time and programs aren't available, it doesn't mean your child is wasting away. You can turn off the Wi-Fi. You can say, put down the electronics, find something else to do. But there are tremendous benefits to be gained from realizing that boredom is the moment right before the creative spark. And don't be fearful of boredom. Kids will solve boredom, and often what they solve in that process is greater than anything that you could have done If you felt that it was your role and responsibility as a parent to be an entertainer, you do not need to entertain your children. Yes, have a relationship with them. Yes, get supervision, but don't be afraid of boredom.
Alyson, thank you so much. This is really helpful.
So great. Have a wonderful summer.
Alyson Schafer is one of Canada's leading parenting experts, and thanks so much to Alyson for sharing that expertise with us. While we aren't going to summer camp ourselves on this show, we're taking a little break over the summer to focus on some special projects, and we want to hear from you as we prepare for them. We need to know your key concerns. We need to know where you think this show has helped you and where it's left you wanting more. If you have any input at all, as we determine what's next for In This Economy, and of course, as always, if you have a question about your own money problems, we would love your input. You can get in touch by emailing us at hello@itepod.ca, and you can call us and just talk it out by leaving a voicemail at 416-935-5935. As I've said to you before, we don't need your real name. If you want to hear from us, though, we do need your real number to call you back. If you've been listening to In This Economy since we started this show last year, thank you so much. You're one of the reasons we do it. We appreciate your time, your attention, and of course your feedback a ton. If you just started listening, well, stay tuned over the summer because we'll bring back some episodes you may not have heard, and we'll also have a few treats here and there along the way. I'm your host and executive producer, Jordan Heath Rawlings. This episode was written and produced by Marshall Whitsett, Allison Broverman, and Stephanie Phillips. The sound design was done by Robin Edgar. Mary Jubrin is our digital editor. Diana Kay is our manager of business development. And together, all of us make up the Frequency Podcast Network, which is a division of Rogers. Thanks for listening. Have a great summer. Save some money, and we'll talk again soon.